Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and to everyone all around the world who follows Plain Talk, the number one show in high level, intellectual, stimulating, thought provoking talk. We are joined this evening by the head of the Political Science Department of the University of the West Indies, Dr. Bishnu Ragoonath. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening. Good
How
to
are
be on
you?
your show. I'm fine,
Great.
thank you.
Very good having you here. Doctor, you head the Political Science Department at the University of the West Indies. Could you explain to us what a political science department does in the political wasteland of the corrupt politics and racist tribal voting of Trinidad and Tobago?
Very good question. What we do is that we train people to become not to be one of those people. And I say this from the point of view of saying that when last have you ever heard somebody with a political science degree entering into politics? People with political science degrees don't go into politics. They know better. What you have is the engineers and the volcanologists and the lawyers and everybody else going into politics. So what we tell people and what we teach people and what it's all about is really about how to manage affairs as well as how to try and do the best that you can. I have a course in ethics that I teach on the campus. Believe it or not, when I do my course in ethics, my students are always asking me, why can't you train the politicians? Why can't you? I said, but will they come to my class? No, they wouldn't. And that's the problem.
Dr. Raghunath, we in the Progressive Empowerment Party were invited to sign a document at an organization that said it protected the ethics and it promoted ethical behavior in politics. And we read the document sitting at the Archbishop House and found um, three items that the actual organization varied itself and it compromised itself on, and we couldn't even sign that document. Is Trinidad a hopeless and lost cause for real sensible politics? Are we just going to end up into a street fight at some point?
All right. So let me put that into all of that you just said into context. And yes, I am also the chair of that committee that has that role, and that is the Code of Ethical Political Conduct. So, and the Council for Responsible Political Behavior. I am the chair of that council. So I expected that you would want that explained, and I will explain that to you as well as to your viewers. Clearly, one, you have to understand that code of ethical political conduct, where it started. And it started way back in 2014, when literally we were trying to raise the conduct of the elections process. Conduct of the elections process will tell me that I could only look at an election period. For instance, and people have complained to me about it already, why haven't we said anything about all the nonsense that went on before we entered into COVID? Why have we not? Why are we still quiet? Simply, a code was drafted. A code was drafted and was signed by the majority of political parties in 2015. We've extended though, that to all the other parties who came out after 2015, and several parties who came in after 2015 came in and signed. Your party, however, and you, I believe you attended and said that you were not signing because there were you considered there certain breaches in the code by some of the founding organizations. And I take that as a given. I am not a member of the founding organization. I was invited to take a code, monitor adherence to a code. And that is what we do. How we do it and when we do it in an election period. According to that same code that was signed by the parties in 2015, yeah, I'll give. By that same code which was signed by the parties in 2015, we are told we could only monitor 3 months before an election. 3 months before an election is June. So we start in June. Yes, Mr. Alexander.
So you're saying to me that politicians engage in the most egregious, unethical behavior for 5 years and 3 months? Because the People's Partnership, United Nations Congress government set a precedent now that you have an extra 6 months after your 5 years up to have the election. So you're saying that for 5 years and 3 months or 5 years, you can be as unethical as you want, and the Council for Responsible Behavior in Politics can do or say nothing?
Yes, the council could say nothing because the council, and again, you have to understand the council and how it functions. The council functions as a voluntary organization. Civil society organization have invited us and to try to keep political parties in some degree political perspective. But the problem is that although we've been invited to monitor adherence to a code, guess what? Nobody gives us nobody, not even the founding organizations. For all intents and purposes, this is a voluntary group. We we came together. We were asked whether we would volunteer our time 3 months before an election to monitor what is happening and to bring parties up to date as to when we think that they are stepping out of bounds. So when we were monitoring the 2015 elections, Rudal Munilal went on a platform and made some statements. And for all intents and purposes, we thought those statements were in breach of the code that his party had signed. We call on the UNC and we call on Rudal Munilal. And Rudal Munilal accepted that what he said on the platform was out of, well, not acceptable. And to that extent, he went back on a platform the next night and says, well, look, I have been called to account. And I am now saying that I am going to try and be careful of what I'm saying. Now, that's one example where we got some change. I'm not saying that we have succeeded. But remember, prior to 2015, it was literally a free fall. You could go on any platform and say anything you want. And you have your supporters cheering you on. And nobody calls you to account. Nobody says anything. And it is in that context that the code was developed. Parties have adhered to and applied to the code. Of course, there are some people who are not signing. We can't force anybody to sign. We can't tell them.
But Dr. Raghunath, I have to interrupt you a little bit to say that, like every other system in Trinidad and Tobago, you've just admitted that for many reasons it is dysfunctional and for some reasons it is non-functional. So for me,
Agreed.
and so for me to sign, now with an abundance of respect, for me to sign and not voice a complaint, what would motivate you as chair and the rest of the membership to actually get the thing functional?
All right. And this is the challenge. This is the challenge. I have been invited to to apply a code of ethics. I didn't write this code. Bear this in mind. I didn't write it. It was drafted by civil society. Civil society apparently took it to the political parties before they came to us. The political parties agreed to it in 2014. The political parties agreed to it in 2014. In 2014, the MSJ, the PNM, the UNC, the COP, and the
They use your
ILP all agreed.
So they use
Huh?
your good name. They use your
No,
good
no.
name to
We
oversee.
came after.
So they're using your good name to oversee an agreement that they entered into without you having sight of that at the creation
At
phase.
that time. Yes. Yes.
And how you feel about
And
that?
they, huh? No, well, you see,
But
the
as
thing about it, you look at the bigger picture. You look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture tells us at that point in time there was nothing in place. There was nothing in place. When, for instance, in 2015, we went to the then EBC and we asked the then chairman of the EBC, Mr. Masson, Mr. Masson, what do you think about this? And you know what was his response? His response was simply, this is something that we in the EBC have been calling for years. No, we cannot force our hand on it. We cannot tell the government what to do. We can't tell political parties what to do. We have to work within the laws. And
but
but that was his problem. We were saying,
but
we say, okay, fine. This is our first step. This is our first step. We're not saying it's perfect. Not saying it's perfect. Step. And that's all that we talked about.
but Dr. Raghunath, it seems to me that I also found that a lot of this was the responsibility of the EBC. A lot of the things that they put. Mhm.
No, and that's what I'm saying. The laws as it stands right now does not facilitate that. The laws as it stands right now does not facilitate it. That's the same thing with the Representation of the People's Act. That is why the Prime Minister up in the Parliament last week and talk about campaign finance reform and say a party, no, so you tell a candidate I come for $50,000, but of course the party said spending $50 million or $500 million, but nobody's accounting for that. That's the laws as we have it right now. Those are things that have to change. And I am saying that as a political scientist, those are things that have to change. But saying that they have to change doesn't mean that they're going to change. Doesn't mean that those people who hold political office wanted to change. Keith Rowley stood up in 2015 and said, we want to bring campaign finance regulations. In 2016, he went to a anti-corruption conference in England and says, I am bringing campaign finance regulations. In 2020, 3 months before an election, that's when he lays it in Parliament. I I use the other example, say, Rashid, you tell me about the system dysfunctional and broken and so on, and I'm showing you how the system is broken. In 2003, in 2003, Patrick Manning and his government recognized procurement challenges that happened with the building of the airport. In 2004, they developed a white paper. In 2006, Keith Rowley had a draft piece of legislation on public procurement. But of course, he wanted to build the waterfront project and he wanted to build Napa in order that we get Chogam and the OAS meeting. So he was told, put that aside. Patrick Manning. Did I say Keith Rowley just now?
Yeah, I
Patrick
know you
Manning.
meant man. I know you meant man.
Right. So Patrick Manning put it aside. 2010, Kamla Prasad Visesa wins an election in May. 2 months later in July, Kamla Prasad Visesa laid procurement legislation in the parliament. She laid it in the parliament, but how long did it take to pass that legislation? It took a whole 4 years plus. You know why? Because we don't want to pass those legislation while we in power. Because if we pass it, it ties our hands. In like manner, Keith Rowley said in 2015, my manifesto promise, I will bring public procurement. Public procurement was passed in 2015. Today is 2020. Have we had the implementation of that bill? No. Likewise, we talk about campaign finance reform, 2015. PNM says we're going to bring campaign finance reform. 2020, they're now laying it. It's now going to joint select committee. Will it be passed in time for elections 2020? Chances are highly unlikely. So the question here that, and this is where I agree, the system is broken, but we can't flip a switch and fix it. It takes
But
time. What I do, as chair of the council, simply showing people where we could make changes. I'm not saying that I'm perfect. All I'm saying is what we intend to do.
Dr. Raghunath, this is no reflection. I don't think you can turn down whatever that echoes are getting on your side. But this is no reflection on you. And the questions I'm asking you is in your capacity, not you personally. And I hope you're getting that. But I'm sensing a frustration in your voice that I feel every single day. I interviewed Basdeo Pandey, a former prime minister, and I asked him. He's a former prime minister in 1995. So a lot of time has passed since. And I asked him, our constitution, and I'm asking you now, because if Keith Rowley, as the prime minister, could stand up in the parliament and speak about political parties, when the parliament is a creature of the constitution and the constitution does not recognize political parties, there is no legal affairs entry, there is no organization you could go to and register an actual political party. So he's already talking nonsense. And I don't understand why we continue to treat our country like duct tape, spit, and WD-40 is what we need, when what we actually need is a complete overhaul and a redevelopment of Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to say to you, I'm hearing words coming out your mouth tonight that gives me hope. Because then that means that there are other people in this country that have the knowledge and the ability to lead that charge. And I am asking you, as a political scientist and the head of the department in the University of the West Indies, do you agree with the statement that our entire system of government is broken and needs to be redeveloped before we could even get to this type of
All
conversation?
right. Okay. So let me just say I do not agree with you that the entire system is something that we can just throw it out of the window. There are still good parts in there that we need to take and keep. However, the point you're making is simply that there's a lot that needs correcting and amending and changing and throwing out and bringing in new things. So let me go back a little bit again. You talk about Basil Pandey in 1995, Prime Minister from 1995 to 2001. Well, let me go back way back to Eric Williams, 1970s. Eric Williams passed the Crossing of Act. You ever heard about that? I'm sure you
Yeah,
did. There's a
did.
Crossing of the Floor Act, but you know that act was passed since the 1970s, but cannot be implemented until today, some 4+ years. Why? Because we have nothing in place to say who is a political party and who is the leader of a political party according to our laws. So
According to our
yes, there
constitution,
are things that need to be changed.
correct. There is one amendment to the constitution. There is how a member of parliament could be removed from office, and there is one entry with an asterisk that refers to if a member having won on the seat on having won the seat via one political party crosses the other, he can be removed by the party that. But nowhere inside of there, not even in the descriptions of the constitution, does it mention what is a political party. So they are referring to something that could be.
Yes, and we did not put, so we passed law, but we did not put the mechanisms to make the law work. That's a simple answer. And that's where we have to ask ourselves the question. And you see, you asked me as a political scientist, what can be done? And I am telling you, this is where politicians have to sit down like mature people, not like little boys and girls who want to buy one toy, and if one of them have it, want to beat up the other one and call the other one names and vice versa. We have to sit down like mature people in a bipartisan way and decide what we need for Trinidad and Tobago to move forward. And we're not going to do that. Why? Because we talk ethnicity, one group and one group, and we on either side, we're not going to go forward.
But Doc, and I want to say this here, I want to say this here. You can't use the term bipartisan. And I said this to Who I was talking to last night? Was it Prakash last night? I said it to my guests last night that we, Dr. Botiwari, that we can't say bipartisan, we have to say national. We can't allow the PNM and the UNC to horse trade what we end up with as law, governing law. I think that's what's
No,
gotten us to here. You've watched 58 years. You've sat and watched 58 years of dysfunctional, malfunctional, non functional stunting. That is what you're referring to. They stunt in the parliament. They go into the parliament, waste $100 million a year, talking a crocus bag of nonsense. When the actual structure, you said that there were no mechanisms. I'm telling you that law have no feet. You can't say that you're talking about a law that refers to a political party when the constitution has no way to recognize or define what a political party is. If we have a problem there, if to be a political organization in this country, you have to form another organization to receive money for the party. You're creating an avenue for corruption right there because the party
agreed,
accounts to no.
agreed. I am totally in agreement with you. Why I say bipartisan and not national is simply this. The unfortunate thing, and you have to appreciate this. The unfortunate thing is who are the people who are going to change our laws in the parliament? Who is the people who are going to sit down in that parliament and make and agree we need constitutional reform? Because we can do as much talking as we want outside here until that don't go into that red house and they don't agree and they don't say yes we have that majority, are we going anywhere? Now
So
we
I
have
wanna ask you
this.
on that, what you just said there, right? Because, and I'm glad that you are the person that's here to answer this question. And I want you to listen to what I'm about to ask you. If our foundation is bad, if our constitution is bad and the parliament that flows from it is bad and the way we elected those people into that office is bad, then all of it is already corrupted. Is there another way that the people of a country could restart itself without violent upheaval and revolution? Could there be some manner in which, and you have a lot more experience in political science than I ever will, but I want to know, have you ever heard of a national discussion referendum where the public could weigh in on what exactly we as a nation want to be?
Again, we could have discussion. You use two critical words there: non-violent, so non-revolution. We need a cultural revolution. We need a psychological revolution. We need a revolution in the mind. We need a revolution within our people. When I see corruption and you see corruption, I will not keep my mouth shut. I will talk about it. We need that to start. Where does that start? It doesn't start in the political parties. It doesn't start in the government. It starts with us. However, this is where we have the problem. The problem with it is that we had the discussion. We could carry that discussion, but at the end of the day, our laws will only allow us to talk outside. Somebody decides this is important enough to make issue, to take it to the fore, then we take that forward. Let me give you a little history again. Campaign finance reform. You know that campaign finance reform, we were talking about it since 2003 in Trinidad. Do you know? You all probably don't know that. Transparency, the Transparency Institute, I know they have their own problems, to their own challenges. But since 2004, 2005, they have had conferences. They brought people from all over the world for us to talk about it. Deo Saran, who was as independent senator, brought it in the parliament. It was raised in the parliament about 3 or 4 times as an independent senator. But like I said, we end up into that situation where when I in power, I don't want to change nothing. Why? Because it suits me. And when I lose power and you come in power, you don't want to change nothing. So that's where we have the problem.
So how often in your lectures are you forced to use the word conundrum?
It is a usual word. It's a usual
Because
word.
that is the conundrum. That's the conundrum. So you're saying to me that the only way to fix the parliament is to get a government inside of there that is not one of the governments that have wanted to maintain status quo to their benefit, and that but that is not possible under the current rules and the way our politics is practiced.
And to a large extent it is. Okay. So let me show you the scenarios as we have it. As at this point in time, and let me tell you something. Every other week, and I'm saying this every other week, as a political scientist, I get an email or a letter from somebody. Until last week, I had somebody come in and tell me, Dr. Ragoonath, we registered a party 2 years ago. We need some guidance as to how to put it in place and operationalize it so we could run in the election whenever the election is held. And I get these requests, and I tell people, I say, you have the problem, come. No, I am not telling you that I will make you the winner. I am telling you what you need to do, how you need to move. And because that's all I could do. I am not going to get involved in your party. I am going to guide how you go forward. But let me use the examples that I wanted to illustrate. 1981, election 1981. ONR won. Sorry, not yeah, 1981. ONR won 96,000 votes. ULF in those days was the UNC won 84,000 votes, and PNM won 120,000 votes. And you know what was the situation in Parliament after that? PNM 26, ULF 10, are none. 96,000 people. More people voted for them in 1981 than they did for the ULF, but they got not a seat in the Parliament. They didn't have a voice. We could very well end up in this election, and I'm merely saying this because I am all have already checked more than 10 political parties who have indicated a real interest contest in this election. And we could very well end up in this election coming here, where one party, one of the major parties, probably get 50% of the vote and could find themselves in government, and the other party gets 20% of the vote and find themselves in opposition, and the 50% of the voters who would have voted have no voice in the parliament. That is the challenge that we face. That is what we need to fix. And we need to fix that because that is the only way we can go forward. Basil Pandey have always
That's
called for constitutional reform.
the question. Timothy Hammersmith is a strong proportional representation. You've read any of his writings on this?
Certainly. Now we have to be
His
careful. We
and
have to be
listen,
careful.
the only version of proportional representation that I have heard that sounds fair, democratically fair, is what he is proposing. I read a lot of that. But you will know a lot more about this. But I'm asking you, that revolution that you talking about, hearts and minds, will make the difference at election time if the people of Trinidad and Tobago want it so. You use the ONR experience, people use the COP 2007 experience, but let's talk 2010, the People's Partnership. Let's talk 1986 and the NAR. There have been times when the public has put all of their energy behind something that they think could make a difference. So I believe it could be self-correcting. I think a lot of our problem is campaign finance, because there's a lot of dirty money in politics. The financial intelligence unit cannot account for the $5 and $6 and $8 and $1,000 that people get handed with a jersey at public meetings that amounts to tens and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. Where that come from? And who gave that money, and what are they expecting in return? Campaign finance reform is mission critical, as is recall, so that you could fire members of parliament who are not performing, and a lot of other things need fixing. But at this point here, the coronavirus, COVID-19, is presenting us with a rare opportunity, because you could get $1 billion from a financier. You can't have a public meeting with goats dressed up like Superman and all that nonsense right now. You still have to come to the people on social media. You have to buy ads on traditional media, but you're limited in a lot of ways to that. I think we have an opportunity now to take strong messages to the public. And I'm saying to you, your abundance of knowledge and your neutrality notwithstanding, you need to be outside there making a big noise and guiding that process. This is the chance that we have right now.
In other words, you're telling me, don't waste a crisis. We have a good crisis, don't waste it. All right?
Always.
So, all right. So we will talk about not wasting a crisis. And I am glad that you picked on that point there. Because for all intents and purposes, that point that you made there is critical for us. We now have to enter into an election with a whole different perspective, a whole different framework. And the question here now is, how will we do it? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not blinded, and I am very much so aware of the open politics that is going on outside there, using right now by the government. I am they are campaigning with COVID finances. So I know that the opposition is fighting hard its own battles in trying to make issues and critical issues. And I mean, and they do have critical issues. But the point about it, it is really and truly the education of our citizenry, who we have now to treat with. I think job that you are throwing out to me. We have to talk. But this is where I come back to one of the critical issues. We have to talk. You mentioned, as you spoke earlier, that one of the things that we need to do is let our voices be heard. Challenge. Do people, and we as independent, non-partisan persons, challenge. Does anybody want, does anybody, and when I say anybody, does the traditional media want to hear us? Do you know, and I am saying this here, do you know that some are blacklisted from some of the traditional media stations because we independent? Because we not movilang and going and take one side or the other? I can for a fact that certain media houses will not call me because they say you're too boring. You're only talking. You're giving a too much of a neutral position. We want it to be scandalous and bacchanal. No, that's not me, and that's part of the challenge. So when you ask, and you see, this is where we come back to your first question: what are we doing? We don't have that facility outside there. We don't have the ability to go out there and tell the media and get the media to print what we want them to print, or to give us, because they don't want that. Okay, so what do? We talk to our students, and we hope that we could impart some degree of information to our students in the hope that they will leave that unity thinking better for themselves.
Boss, you fill me with hope tonight. Speak and your lips moving and my words coming out your mouth. I've been saying these things for a long time too. So I know the frustration you feel. There is something in developed countries called equal time law for media. Now you're not a political party, so you wouldn't this really wouldn't apply to you, but it speaks to what you're
I
saying.
have writ- I have written on campaign finance, and in fact, you would have heard when Keith Rowley spoke recently in the Parliament about his campaign finance. He said in 2014 they went to Barbados. The PNM was the only party who went to an OAS meeting in Barbados. Paper. I was there because the OAS invited me as an independent person to come and say what laws we need to change in the Caribbean to have greater equality of treatment for political parties. So I was there, and Ashton Ford represented the PNM. And every night Ashton Ford used to come sit with me and have dinner because we talk about these things. I have no fear of saying that there are laws in other parts of the world that we could use, but we don't apply them here. We want to run things and maintain a status quo that will keep things the way people want it to be, and those in power want it.
Doc, I feel, I want I think that even this conversation, now people tell me I'm a hopeless romantic and an idealist, and I believe in things that are not going to happen. What we need is for Trinidadians to stop reinforcing the negative. Trinidadians quote the past as if the past equals the future, and that because somebody acted or somebody's acted in a certain way in another circumstance, that they are governed to act that way in every circumstance. I don't believe that. I think that we have very bright people, and I think that Trinidadians want a better Trinidad and Tobago. I think that they've been let down. The NAR experience ended badly, and the People's Partnership as well. And the issue cannot be hasty accommodations for the purposes of achieving government, making wild promises that all parties don't buy into. You cannot get into an arrangement or a relationship with people, and we say that all the time. We've been invited to every time two, three political parties sit down, they invite us. And we say that and if you read, and I'm going to ask Felicia Holder, Chairman, and Satish Ramsaran, Head of PEP Media, to send you the stuff so that you could critique if you want. But we stand for a lot of the same things that you stand for. We center the road. Our role is to inform, educate, and empower. But we can't just get into accommodations of convenience, knowing that the reality is if you don't agree fundamentally, ideologically, and philosophically, then when you get into office, after you achieve office, the bonds that hold you together will fall apart.
Well, of course, that is always a challenge. It is a challenge, but again, what's one of those things that you talked about earlier, and you talked about a national agenda. And that is what we need to develop. We need to develop a national agenda, an agenda which will take us forward, not one that will keep us where we are. The challenge, however, is that our leaders of today are not of that mindset. When Basdev Pandey, for instance, and I'll use Basdev Pandey as an example, probably around 1998, 99, thereabouts, when Basdev Pandey went to have his internal election and got Carlos John, I think it was, as his deputy political leader. I remember going to Guyana shortly thereafter and having a CARICOM secretariat. And one of the guys there told me, he says, boy, you know, Basdev Pandey, that man is 50 years ahead of Trinidad and Tobago because he's actually trying now to move an party, the UNC, at that point in time, as an Indian party, to one that will have a mixed base. And I said, Basdev Pandey alone cannot do it. What you need is others. That's Basdev Pandey was pushing Carlos John, but the UNC voted against Carlos John and put Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj as the deputy political leader. You see, that is the kind of understand to understand. after 1986, 81. Eric,
I'm going to ask you one question before, because you're going to move on, and I don't want us to lose this. That whole experience that was itself a marriage of convenience. So whoever told you, because Bastio Pandey is a wizard at framing a narrative of his agenda to look magnanimous. But Carlos John, as his deputy political leader, that was jettisoning his heir apparent, Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, who kept him out of jail and worked in the vineyards with Bastio Pandey. Pandey brought that on himself and he left that to be what it was and left them to fight. But that vision for a united Trinidad and Tobago outside of race is a beautiful vision, but I don't think grabbing Lawrence Dupre's man of business that was sent to represent CLICO and CL Financial in the United National Congress was the way to do it.
agreed. But Lawrence Dupre did not only send Carlos John there, he sent Andre Monta into the PNM, who was the PNM's treasurer. So Lawrence Dupre was playing his own
Everybody
politics.
Everybody was playing both sides. I mean, I had Botiwari here last night. I could have asked him all them questions, but I literally beyond it because the conversation you referred to it earlier, the conversation that we have to be having right now as a nation is how to know where to go. We still have no clue who we are and where we're trying to go. 5 year chunks of our lives are lost to political governance, infighting, squabbling, and bacchanal. And we keep thinking that at the end of the 5 years, while this government deteriorates and collapses on itself, that we will go and catch back the last one that we voted out to vote them in, and maybe this time they learn the lesson because we send them to sit in a corner for 5 years. I'm hoping, like you, the Trinidadians use this opportunity for this. You said, don't waste a good crisis. This is a good one to not waste. People sit down in their homes and tell me that we are coming out of this a better version of ourselves. I think that the best way to know that and to test it is what we do politically. Vernon de Lima is on this thread, and he says, talk is talk, but crab ain't coming out the hole. And he's a man that has experienced a long time in this thing. People are jaded by politics. But you still, with all the frustration I hear in your voice, you still here tonight and you still sound like you have hope for a better Trinidad and Tobago. Am I correct? That's what I'm getting. Are you still
It,
hopeful?
let me tell you something. I have told this time and time again. Somebody have to stand up and save Trinidad and Tobago. Somebody have to stand up and work with Trinidad and Tobago. I am not giving up on Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad, there is still hope for Trinidad and Tobago, But the problem with it is that we have to work, and we could make it. We could make the changes that we need. We just have to ensure that people start thinking about what is right. Again, I tell you, I had a I like this example. I had a class in ethics, and I told somebody, and I made a statement one day in my class. I said, if you are supposed to go to work for 8 o'clock and you go to work for 10 o'clock, what are you? A horse must graze where it is tied. I said, good. I said, but if you go to the market and you go to buy a pound of potato and the person give you one short of the pound, what is he? He's a thief. So but you wouldn't call yourself a thief because you are taking other people's money, but you're not giving them what you're working for. I said, and that's the kind of realization we have to start moving ourselves into thinking that we have the power of change, In 2003, I will go back. In 2003, when Manning was prime minister and he had just come into the office, they brought in a corruption buster, this Spaville from Hong Kong, to tell us what we must do about corruption in Trinidad. And I remember I went to the Attorney General's office to listen to this man. And I listened to him, and afterwards he said, he asked for questions because you had the Chamber of Commerce and various other people there. And they were asking questions. And he watched me and says, but you haven't said anything. Who are you? And I told him, I said, I'm a lecturer. I said, but let me tell you something. You know what's the problem here? All around this table are set of business people. They are only concerned about grand corruption. They're not concerned about the bribes that they send their staff to pay public officers to make sure that when they send in an invoice to the ministry, that their invoice gets passed before somebody else who cannot afford to pay a bribe. I said, so petty corruption is where we need to start. We need to start with people on the ground, and we could work with people on the ground. We need the right things. We need to tell them that they have to stand up. We need to let them know that they have a voice. We need to ensure that people could understand that when they need to lead, when they are called upon, they will stand up and say what is right and not simply what has been said before and where the bandwagon is going. That's the problem we have. Now we could change. I see change as possible. I am not saying it may not come immediately, and that's why, if I go back to the start of the show, when you asked about the Council for Responsible Political Behavior, I said it was that first step. And I am willing to take that first step even though nobody wants to walk with me, I will take that first step. And people see that it makes a difference, maybe they will join with me. I know that you are on a similar campaign because you are probably saying you are taking a step here. You don't have the whole wide following, fine. But the point about it, taking that first step is what is important.
Well, I think that all of us who say these things may get an opportunity to prove that we really are for country first. And I tell people all the time, I don't need to be Christ. I don't even need to be John the Baptist. I will labor in the vineyards. I will cut the road and I will work to whoever is the best person for the job. Unfortunately, like the joke that they made about Trinidad and Tobago as why we don't have a crash for Christmas, is that even though they could find um, even though that they could have found the virgin and the manger, they couldn't find three honest men. And that's Trinidad and Tobago for you. People make that joke all the time. Do we, as a people, have a vision for Trinidad and Tobago? Do we collectively? Or do we have our clique and clan vision based on what has been told to us is our individual struggle? There's no national struggle. There's no national vision. The Progressive Empowerment Party works very hard to offer a national vision, strong policies, and we do have quite a big following. A lot of them are Trinidadians and Tobagonians who have left these shores and gone abroad and see what a first world developed nation works like, and then they get in their mind that the Trinidad that I miss if it was first world and developed, I come home in a heartbeat. And they see in the Progressive Empowerment Party, and not shamelessly plugging ourselves here, but just speaking to things that the people who are viewing need to know, that all of the issues that need addressing, that you know and I know, that the PNM and the UNC know, that every political office holder that has ever existed in this country knows, the things that were supposed to be done to fix the country, we know it too. But the difference with us is we are not connected to the deep pocket financiers. We have no contractual obligation to anybody. And that if given the chance, we would amass what we call the political Avengers, bring the best and brightest minds, the strongest hands to actually put the things in place that every single one of us knows it'll take to make this the first world developed country it was meant to be. So we're here, and I say to you, we will have an opportunity to talk this talk again, you and I. I believe every word you're saying, and I'm believing it on your career. I disagree with you for saying that even though the Council for Ethical Behavior, whatever it's called, responsible behavior, even though what they are proponents of is not functional, you consider it a step. I think that we're supposed to be beyond taking wrong steps now. And I think that your good name and your knowledge and your experience and your ability should be put to better use and better work. Media notwithstanding, the world is changing. This format you and I are on right now, this is today, this is tomorrow. Long after there's no more of traditional media, Because the people who still need their news 7 o'clock on the dot at night, they're dying out. Everybody else is content on demand. You have and you should not waste all of that knowledge and all of that experience.
All right, and as you seem to be winding down your show, let me just end by saying two things. One, as a political scientist, you asked early on, what do we do? So I will tell you that one of the things we talk about in political science and in political development, we talk about the crises of development. And the first crisis that we have to deal with in Trinidad and Tobago that we teach in our students is we have to deal with an identity crisis. And that identity crisis is we have to start saying, are we seeing ourselves as Trinidadians and Tobagonians first? Forget who you are, who else you are. Because you see, I was once asked a question. In fact, it was a class when I was an undergraduate student. Gordon Draper was my lecturer, and at 8 o'clock one morning, he walked in the classroom and asked us, take out a sheet of paper and in 10 ways identify who you are. And at the end of the listing, and he went through the class and he says, how many of you all have on that list? Because people write, I'm a son, I'm a daughter, I'm a brother, I'm a sister, I'm a husband, a wife, uncle, aunt, all kinds of things. You say, how many of you all had on that list, I'm a Trinidadian? And that, I think, is one of the biggest issues that we have to deal with. We have to ask and we have to treat it, and that's political science teaching, deal with the identity crisis before we could move forward.
You sound like you're tearing up who transformed Singapore into a first world developed nation. I mean, Singapore is now the is now what the benchmark for the rest of the countries who would like to achieve first world and developed nation, being a small country. You took a page out of his book there. That's exactly what he said, that until the people could believe in themselves as citizens of the country and work together, they had all the ethnic division and all the challenges that we have. So, I mean, again, that gives me hope. All of the people that we bring on this show every night is to give Trinidadians and Tobagonians a glimpse of hope, of Trinidad and Tobago through the eyes of people who, if given the opportunity, would fix this place and would fix it fast. We need that. We need that now. Last night, Botiwari admitted that we're staring into the double barrel of a disaster coming at us, and our politicians are not talking about that. We're engaging in some cheap politics, fighting for office, instead of being straight up with the people and talking what the future could hold for a Trinidad and Tobago. As a political scientist, I want to ask you one last question. The changes that the EBC making to constituencies at this point, now, before the elections, who do you challenge it with, and does the court involve itself in matters like these? Because I know the courts are loath to interfere with decisions of the parliament. But what about decisions of statutory bodies like the Elections and Boundaries Commission? If we believe, or if anybody has a complaint to make, who is the body that you could go to ask for redress? We're not getting audio. I'm not getting audio from you. Sorry. Start over. I wasn't getting
Okay,
audio from you.
all right, yeah, that's a legal question. As a political scientist, all I will tell you is that you have to use the legal uh, structures in the society, and you have to go to judicial review and those sorts of things. But as a political scientist, for all intents and purposes, once that goes through the parliament and the parliament approves it, and with the simple majority, because that's all it takes in the parliament to approve an EBC report, then it is approved. If you want to challenge it, you may have to go through the legal perspectives, but I cannot advise you on that one.
Dr. Bishnu Ragoonath, I want to tell you something. I I was supposed to come and be interviewed by you a couple months ago, and we had.
And you refuse because I am in a small station.
That's not why. I went to a station in the back of, I can't remember where, somewhere in the east, their whole studio is the size of the dining room table in my house, and I have a small dining room table. And I sat there and I went with Ghost and his crew. I will go anywhere. So no, you wanted to make sure that we were sending all of the nice ladies of the PP, which you did. And that's just a joke, yeah. But Doctor, I want to thank
But
you very,
you
very.
did, and you sent some nice informed ladies to chat with me.
All of the PP. Good and beautiful people inside and out. So anytime you want more of them on your show, you just let me know. And I'm looking forward to us having more of these conversations because joke and fun aside, if you go back and you read the comments on the video while the show is going on, people are very engaged with what you're saying, and that is good because we need more and more people talking these issues. And I, for one, I want to tell you something. Very impressed with the stance that you take and the things that you were forthcoming with. We need more of our Trinbagonians to have the courage of their convictions and compassion for the country to stand up and do what you're doing. I want to thank you for joining us. And as we tell all of our guests every night, in your closing comments, take as much time as you need, make your points.
My point is, it's only one point I would want to make, and that is for Trinidadians and Tobagonians to stand up and be counted. Tell our parties, tell our political leaders, tell our politicians when they come to ask us for a vote, what exactly we want to see. We don't want to simply keep going around in circles. We don't want the status quo maintained. We want a country where the rights and the dignity of the people are maintained and preserved, and where we can have progress and development. That's all we have to be looking for. To that extent, I go back to my theory of politics and I say, yes, we need that identity crisis. We need to overcome it. We need to have a proper distribution or overcome the distribution crisis. We need to overcome the integration crisis. And we need to the penetration crisis in the context of what is this to make sure our society survives and progress to the future. Thank you very much.
Head of the Political Science Department at the University of West, Dr. Ragoonath. Thank you very, very much, my friend. I look forward to more of these conversations with you. And that Trinidad and Tobago is where we have to leave that tonight. That hour flew, I think, the fastest of any hour of any show we've done since we've started these plain talk shows all those months ago. And I think that Dr. Ragoonath has a wealth of information to add. And I want you to go back and look at all the plain talk videos. Take the time and find the common thread. Besides the fact that all of the people that you are going to see going to fill you with hope and impress you with their critical minds, you'll see a common thread. People who want a better country and are willing to put aside themselves and their personal desires to get it. I think that because people like Dr. Raghunath are still fighting this fight, that we have hope. And I hope that you get that too. That there are so many good, bright, and capable people in Trinidad and Tobago that we must work hard to make sure that our politics brings the best and the brightest among us and puts them to work redeveloping this country to the benefit of all. Tomorrow night we have former government opposition Senator Wayne Sturge, and we're going to be touching on some legal issues about a lot of things that were taking place, including the prisoners from the cocaine tanker. Those are some issues that need to be discussed. We're going to touch on the Minister of National Security. Today, the Progressive Empowerment Party received information and we put freely into the public space, no press conference, no stunting. And we put it in the public space that the Minister of National Security said that he and the Prime Minister did not know who the Prime Minister was going to meet. And we got from the Ministry of National Security a list of the names showing passport numbers. Your Prime Minister and your Minister of National Security have been caught lying, openly deceiving the people of this country. And I think that we are beyond now accepting anything from them as an explanation. It is time now for the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Commissioner of Police, and other people who hold such offices to start to take a look at what these two gentlemen and others in their clan are doing. This amounts to, at the very least, misbehavior in public office. And any public office holder who wants to be respected for his integrity and his ability, her integrity or her ability, have the courage of your oath of office or the responsibility of your job description and take necessary action to protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago, even if the people we need to be protected from are the Prime Minister and his Minister of National Security. We need an investigation into the handling of COVID-19 by the Minister of Health. A lot of the lies that have been told need to be investigated. We also have to investigate the Minister of Finance and a lot of the budgetary allocations, including the contradiction that we just heard that the Minister of Health said that the government's entire mask program is through Serval and that there is no budget for it, that they're not paying for it. And then the Minister of Finance said he paid $5 million to some bid winner. We didn't even know that there was a bid going on, or where's the transparency of that bid? This entire government, like the government before, has left nothing but a sour taste in the mouths of citizens who are looking on and seeing cheap, dirty, nasty, tribal, corrupt politics where real governance and leadership should be. And it is time to change that. And if we want that, we could have a better country starting right now. Until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.